Hi, this is the more advanced tutorial for Verbatim. This is designed for slightly more experienced debaters who have some experience using it but may not know how to most efficiently use all of its functions in debates or how to use some of the lesser known functions in it. If you are a new debater or someone who doesn't know what Verbatim is or how to use even its basic functions, there is a basic tutorial that comes before this video. Go watch that one first and learn the basics of Verbatim before you come to this one. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start off in this video is with the disclosure function. Pretty much everyone on the national circuit now discloses, which means that learning how to disclose efficiently is something that you should probably learn how to do. So Verbatim has two main functions that allow you to disclose efficiently. The first one is a caseless wizard. That's this top button over here in this section. So basically it opens up this dialog box where it's very similar to the actual wiki page where you enter your basic tournament info, round reports, sites, etc. I personally didn't really use this because I didn't like what happened to some of the formatting on my round info and how it showed up on my wiki, but this is just to show you that this exists. So the first step is to include what the tournament was. So let's say it's the Loyola tournament. It's round 1. I happen to be AF. And let's say I debated Parker Whitfield. So I'd fill in his code. And then my judge was Paras Kumar. And now here's the round reports tab. So the round reports, if you don't already know, is a basic breakdown of what happened in the round. So what the AF strategy was, and then what the neg ended up collapsing to. So with this particular example, this was an AF that I read on September, October last year. So the 1AC would have been Russia AF. Then the 1NC would have been T countries, a security K, a warming disad, and case turns. And then the 2NR ends up going for T countries. So this is a fake round report, but gives you an idea of what you're supposed to do. The AF, the 1NC, and then what the 2NR collapses to. If there was anything special in the 1AR, like let's say the 1AR read a new theory shell, then that's something that you should include too. So this is designed for like major aspects of strategy and off-case positions and shells. The next part is the sites. So there's an automatic way to do it. Bear in mind, you do have to make a pocket for this. So as you can see, there's a little 1AC pocket, and that shows up here. And if I click the automatic site creator and just give it a minute, then we have the site syntax for this particular speech doc all ready to go already. You can edit the entry title, i.e. how it will show up in here. So since this is step-docked, we want to make it step-docked Russia AC. You can add a prefix. I personally never found this super useful, but something you can do. Now you can also open source your document. So what it means to open source is that it basically takes the Word document you were working off of it and posts it on the wiki. This is something that is optional in regarding disclosure. Most of the LD community hasn't embraced open source yet, but it is an option available for you to do so. You just hit open source here, and then it will do the job for you. And then, of course, at the end, it's a review of all the information I've entered just to make sure that it's all correct. And then I would hit upload, and then it would actually upload to the wiki. Now, what I actually tended to use at actual tournaments is that I would use the Wikify function, which is basically just another version of the automatic site creator that you saw in the caseless wizard. It transforms all of the speech doc into a wiki-friendly syntax, which you can simply copy and paste into the sites box on the NDCA wiki, and then it will put it in for you, and it will come out looking with the proper syntax. This is a not such a good example. Here we have a good example. This is what proper wiki syntax looks like. It's very readable, and you can see all the sites as well as what the tags say. I have seen this function sort of break down on older computers or slower computers, so you should get familiar with wiki syntax. One equal sign is a pocket, 2 is hat, 3 is a block, and then 4 on each side represents a tag. 2 asterisk marks means a site. And doing this represents the first and last few words of a card. So if your Wikify function does break down, then you can use this syntax to simply manually put it into the wiki. It kind of sucks, but at a point, if your computer is breaking down, then you don't have much of the options. I do believe on the NDCA website it does tell you how to write syntax. Yeah, here it is. So if you are ever in a position where you need to disclose quickly, but the Wikify function is not working out for you, then that syntax does exist. Okay, so that handles most of disclosure. The next part would be to create a speech doc. So making a speech doc and accessing documents is mostly over on this panel of Verbatim. So if you want to make a speech doc for a round, let's say that I finished round 1 and I have to get to round 2 now. So once I make my speech doc, then Verbatim has this function up here called speech where I'll make a new speech document. And let's say it's Loyola round 2, and I am neg against Stuyvesant KF. So I could title my document such as so, and then it will make the document, and then it will have me save it somewhere on my hard drive. And so I've made my speech doc. So now I can start compiling my disads and whatever cards I want to read on case. So that's making a speech doc. Now, the reason why you want to use this function specifically is because making this speech doc allows you to very quickly transfer cards and files into your speech doc. So let's pretend that this was a negative file, or I will just open up a negative file. So let's say we were just reading the free speech topic. And let's say I wanted to read my funding disad. So we have this funding disad that we want to read, and copying and pasting it would probably take too long. So what we can do, and we have to switch windows anyway, what we can do is that once we've highlighted all the relevant parts of this ad, we can press the tilde key. The tilde key is the key that on most keyboards is to the left of the numerical 1 button at the top of the number row. It's right below escape. And what it does is that if you press it, it will send whatever you had highlighted into the speech doc. So we had the funding disad highlighted here. And lo and behold, after pressing the tilde key, we now see the disad under the one-off pocket of the speech doc. The tilde key will send the whatever text you have highlighted where your cursor currently is. So you want to make sure that your cursor is in the right place before you send it. So we would put it under the second off pocket, and then we would of course get another disad. So the politics disad, and so we would we want to take this politics disad and then tilde, and then once again it shows up here. And then you could of course do this with all your other blocks as well. But hence another reason to use proper headers, because what you can do with headers is that it allows you to quickly select entire long blocks. So you saw that I just had to scroll through and copy and paste. What headers allow you to do in Verbatim, or just in Word in general, is that say you have a multiple point block, what you can do is that you can right click on the header and then select heading and content, and then simply hit Control, and then you can hit the tilde key after doing that. And then once again, the block ends up showing up in the document. Sort of screwed that one up, but that's because my cursor was not in the right spot. Now, let's say the function right below speech is just a new blank document, which you do to quickly make an unsaved document. Let's say you're starting a new case file, then that's how you would make it. But let's say you use that function and you wanted to start compiling all your disads for your speech doc into that document. What you can do is that you hit this choose doc function, and then it will open up all the current documents that are open on your computer, and then you can select one of them to be the speech doc. So we'll hit doc 8 as choose doc, and now this will be treated as a speech doc. So now let's say we have this politics dissad again, and we hit tilde key. It is now in the new speech doc that we selected. You can also, this arrow over here serves the same function as the tilde key, just slightly more inefficient. That button I just pressed, what that does is that it arranges different docs based on whether or not they're a speech doc or just a regular other document. So for example, now on the left we have the politics dissad file, and on the right we have the speech doc that we were compiling. The idea of that function is that you can easily see what you're writing, what you're compiling, and that way you have a more visual grasp of what's happening. The rest of this is related to being able to flash or email your opponent what your speech doc is. If you're wondering what this is the virtual tub. This is a function I personally never used, but and I frankly haven't heard of anyone using, but it is available for you. What the virtual tub is that it will basically take a folder in your computer and sort of do this with it. So this is a very old folder of mine from camp. And then it will make, what it will do is with each of the documents that have headers in them, it will sort of break down the headers and display them for you. So for example, if we were to go to an actual extensive file, like say my cap AC, then we would have the pocket, and then there were subheaders under the pocket that was like, okay, this is the 1AC, this is the different parts of the 1AC, here are the underview cards, new 1AR add-ons, etc., etc. And that way we can quickly bring up different parts. Or at least in this case, what it does is that it pastes them into the document. So unfortunately, we're in the middle of the document, so let me do that again. Cap AC. So apparently the function of this is that you can quickly just put things in. So 1AR blocks, let's say we want A2 psychoanalysis K. I have no idea how extensive this is going to be. And then it just quickly pastes in A2 psychoanalysis K. That is a virtual tub. Once again, wasn't a personal user, but it is something that you can use for your speech docs. Now, if you're wondering about this co-author function, that is something we're reserved for people who have PADS accounts. I personally don't have one, so I can't really speak as to what that ends up doing. My general impression of it is that it is something that allows co-authoring of speech documents or general case docs. I'm guessing that's the function that sort of enters that mode or something. If you have a PADS account, I would recommend asking your coach or your teammates how exactly to use it. Okay, so now the rest of this is going to be sort of walking through now the visual interface. There are two main functions here, and the differential for one of them is very small. The first one is whether or not you would rather view your documents in web view or draft view. I personally prefer draft view, but web view is sort of like how you would see this if it were a website, and it displays it sort of end to end like this. There are no page breaks, and that's just sort of how it looks. Draft view is slightly different. It does demonstrate page breaks and sort of keeps page margins in the document. So what I mean is that it won't go to the end of the screen, and you will see page breaks like this, I personally prefer this because for me it's just easier to read, and I like being able to see where the pages are breaking, but to each their own. If you press this, it will restore it to the default view, and you can set that in verbatim settings over here, like you just saw me do. The next thing you have to consider is the read mode. So this is the way to read a document when you're actually reading it in speech. So if we press read mode here, it will make the document a lot bigger, and it will be easier to read, so that it's just easier for you to do in round. And then you just press the arrow keys to go down the doc. That way, when I get to the end of this card, I just hit the next key, and then I read down that part. Then we just go back to edit document. So that's the visual interface part. Now the rest of this video is going to have decreasing marginal utility in terms of function. These are all just sort of the extra bells and whistles that Verbatim came with attached that have varying degrees of usefulness. The first thing to mention is probably these three functions over here: the timer, record, and stats. Timer is what it sounds like. It opens up this timer app that you can adjust the times on, so that if you got your timer or something, you could time it. Record starts an audio recording if you want to record rounds. Quick side tip: I would highly recommend recording rounds in some fashion or another, whether it's through your phone or this function or a separate recorder, because that allows you to go back and look at rounds and see what your mistakes were. Back on track, this stats button is a useful tool. So if we were to open, say, this document here that has my app, if we were to hit the stats button, what that does is that it sort of looks at the number of cards that are in this document and spits out statistics and a rough estimate of how long it would take to read. It's kind of funky because from what I can tell, it only seems to count highlighted words in sort of the estimate of how long it takes to read. So if you have a file that's just unhighlighted, it will just assume it takes you like 50 seconds to read, and when in reality it should take a lot longer. This file is slightly longer, so it's probably taking a lot longer to compute all the statistics, but eventually it will spit out, the number of cards it claims I have, as well as how long it would take me to read at this particular pace. We're just going to close that now. Over here in the sort of card cutting functions, I think I talked about some of this in the last tutorial, but if I forgot to cover them, there's this automatic underline function, which I'm going to put a massive disclaimer on. I personally never use this for several reasons. One, I always thought it was just better to cut your own evidence pedagogically, because it got me familiar with the topic literature, and it made me understand what I was reading around. And second, the few times I did try this just for fun, I was never particularly impressed by the way it lined down cards. The sort of how it works is that it looks at the words in your tag and tries to identify and line down the text paragraphs of text based on that. But the problem is that it's not particularly good at that, and you'll always come up with a higher quality ev just by cutting it yourself. This is the automatic underline mode. What this does is basically what it does is you click it. Anytime you highlight something, it will become underlined. The OCR is basically something you use when you have something that can't be copied and pasted either, like a Google book. And what it does is that you, so I'll bring up a Google book right now. So let's say we have this book about pragmatism, and it's from Google Books, so we can't copy and paste from it directly because it doesn't let us. What OCR is theoretically supposed to be able to let us do is, if we were to click it, we could sort of select what parts we want to copy and paste into our document, and hopefully it doesn't crash my Word. It will take a second to process. But as you can sort of see already, it's not particularly reliable. Once again, put my cursor in the wrong place. As you can see, the box didn't go over where my cursor is. I think I actually talked to the person who sort of runs Verbatim and asked him about what this problem was. It seems to me that this OCR is a bit buggy, and that on most versions of Verbatim and computers, it doesn't seem to work properly. There is an online OCR that is free that you can use via screenshots of your window. So it's not a strictly this is not a make or break tool. Similar thing with this underline mode. I have tried to use it and it constantly bugs out on me. Once again, I think I talked to the person who runs Verbatim. He told me it was supposed to get fixed, but I have not seen an update since I messaged him. So just use the F9 underline. It takes maybe a couple seconds longer to do all that. Okay, so under this More tab, you have a bunch of little one-off functions that could find use sometime. The one I generally tend to use was standardized highlighting. So if you're on a team with a lot of people, then what will happen a lot is that you guys all use different color highlighting, and that's annoying to read because your eyes have to constantly shift colors, or some people may just have certain color blindness issues. So what this does is that it standardizes highlighting to the current color. So let's say if I were to select yellow, standardize highlighting, and then it turns all my highlighting yellow. The rest of these functions, I'm not going to go through each of them because they would take too long, but I think they're all fairly intuitive as to what they do. That is almost it for Verbatim. I think that there is one thing I'm leaving out here, which is some of the odds and ends in the settings. You can adjust how the auto arranger sets it up. So remember when I ran that earlier and I had a doc on the left and a speech doc on the right, you can adjust how much each doc takes up a portion of the screen here. Set up your VTUP here, your PADS, your case list, your email. There is an email function over here that sends an email in Verbatim. Once again, something I never personally use, but something that you can use. Oh, this keyboard. What this does is that over here you saw these F2 functions. You can adjust what those function keys do. So I believe the default for Verbatim for F2 is paste. I changed it to shrink text just because that was something I use more often than just paste, because I just Control-V for paste. You can change the formatting of what specifically how you like it. Some teams have different ways of formatting specific parts of headers or underlining, so that's where you would adjust that. There is one thing that I should mention that is down here regarding the condense function. This hasn't quite found its way into LD yet, but it's something that is cared about in policy debate a lot and may eventually end up filtering into LD, and it's something called paragraph integrity. Paragraph integrity is basically when you copy-paste a card and you condense it, you should keep the paragraph breaks, i.e. it should be clearly indicate. You should be able to tell that different parts of a card are from different paragraphs. The reason being is that sort of paragraph integrity is necessary to preserve sort of the context the article was written in, and that's sort of an evidence ethics issue that right now only policy seems to care about, but I can very easily see LD caring about as well. So if you check off retain paragraphs when you are pasting in an article, when you condense it, it will condense it, but make sure to keep the paragraphs the way they are. You can also add pilcrows if you're sort of the person that likes pilcrows. Okay, I think that is it for advanced verbatim functions. Uh, see you.